everyone. Welcome to Facebook Live Singularity Hub from the Global Summit. I am so excited for this next conversation with my dear friend and colleague, Adene Sacks. Here at Singularity University, we talk a lot about using technology in order to solve humanity's grandest challenges. At the heart of our conversation is impact. Adene Sacks is an impact expert. She is a consultant that uses design, big data strategies, and leveraged approaches in order to scale impact with a variety of organizations. She's worked at the Stanford D.school, she's worked with DataKind, the Working Assumptions Foundation, and many others. So it's an absolute thrill to have you here today to talk about your work. Thanks for joining us. So Adene, many would agree that there are a lot of opportunities opened up around impact, certainly with technology and with changes in the world. And there is also a lot of unpredictability and uncertainty. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing?
I can, and I think I was thinking on the way over here about if what I would have said on Friday would be different today, because I think that in light of the weekend's events in Charlottesville, it's like no one could underscore more about what needs to happen in the next generation of leadership. So I would say, what's happening in the social sector, and you'll have to tell me a little bit about if this is reflected in what you're seeing in the business world, but no one can go it alone anymore. The social sector is not going to solve poverty. The government is not going to reform education. The business world is not going to, do workforce development alone. And I think what we're seeing now is just this consciousness that it is going to be our collective work together to create the future that we want to create. So in my work, I spend a lot of time talking with leaders about the fact that it's not time to build the next Teach for America or the next Google, that really it is about understanding where each other is coming from, the work of empathy, and also creating that kind of collective moment so that we can collaborate together. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
It is an interesting moment for sure, where we're really realizing that the traditional roles of leadership for certain sector no longer applies.
Yeah.
And I think this is a moment where we all need to ask ourselves how we can contribute to creating positive impact, because some of the assumptions we had about who was responsible for what role are being foundationally challenged.
Right.
So you do a lot of work around networked leadership. Talk to us a little bit about what that means.
It's changing also. I think in its early stages, people would think about networks as, increased visibility equals increased access. And I think that actually is still true, but what's happening now has gotten a little bit deeper. So what are networks good for, right? It's like networks are a vehicle to promote kind of contagion around certain things that we as leaders feel like need to happen in the systems that we act on. So for me, right now, it's really about what does it take to be a leader in those networks. And that is very different than the kind of top-down transactional stuff that we have. A lot of us kind of would characterize old leadership strategies, learning how to balance a budget, learning how to manage a team, that kind of stuff. And as we move into more complex systems that are made visible by the networks that we all function in, we have to really build on different leadership capacities. And for me, that's really categorized by kind of two things on either parts of the spectrum. It's increasing self-awareness. So how are we showing up and how do people react to the way that we show up? And then it's also our awareness of system. It's where do we fit in the ecosystems that we're trying to affect change? And are we aware of our place and our role in those ecosystems?
So both the very intrapersonal, understanding ourselves, and then interpersonal and even more organizational about how we connect with different individuals who represent different networks or are part of nodes of other networks.
Totally. So it's that 2,000-foot view, and then at the ground level, waking up in the morning and being all right, what am I here to do? Yeah.
You wrote about this in the Stanford Social Innovation Review about living in a both-and world. Yes. Tell us a little bit about what you were talking about there.
Yeah, it's a little bit of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? We're still going to get up every day, we're going to go to work, we're going to manage our teams, we're going to write white papers, we're going to think about what are the strategies that we need to put in place to get either our product, be it an actual product, or in my world, it's really about what is the change that we're committed to. So still those traditional strategies really play a role, especially when you're talking about scale and quality control. Those are really, really important. But I think that as we move into greater complexity, the roles of empathy, the roles of being able to really collaborate across diversity, getting very, very comfortable with iterative structures, with learning structures, with things that are just not going to end neatly in a nice little package, those skills come into greater play when you're talking about the both and. And so for leaders who know how to really kind of balance those two, they really know how to deploy one side of that spectrum versus the other.
Yeah, I think the article does such a great job around saying, look, organizations are good for some things, and networks are good for some things. Totally. And the question is, how do they work together? Do you have an example of that? Maybe one in the article or one that you're seeing?
So one of the ones that I love to talk about is the world of DataKind and the network of DataKind. So DataKind is both an organization and kind of a global movement. And so DataKind was started by Jake Porway. It's focused on bringing machine learning to the world of social good. And there's lots of people who have tried this before, and I think what differentiates DataKind is their really embrace of the complexity that is a bunch of data scientists walking into the world of social good, right? So they know what they know, poverty experts know what they know, and it is only through the real bonding of a team that you can start to address some of the complexity that's inherent in the conversations that DataKind is in. So one example. They partnered with the American Red Cross. The American Red Cross was trying to figure out how they deploy their very scarce resources to the communities that have issues around fire, domestic fires. And what they found is that, the homes that don't have fire alarms in it, they have greater incidence, no surprise, of fires. So they paired with DataKind, and again, it's like Einstein said, right? Give you an hour to solve a problem, you spend 95% of that time really defining the problem. And DataKind really took the time to figure out what is it actually that they're trying to learn. Like what is the crux that's going to lead them to the definition of what it takes for a community to really start to deploy their resources and put fire alarms in homes. And that work paid off. That deep, deep empathy work with the people in the communities, the deep empathy work with the people who work for the American Red Cross, was able for them to define a machine learning program that was took 5 minutes for them to solve. So just one example.
That's great. What I really hear is that both groups coming together to leverage what the other is best at and come out with something better.
Totally.
I know you spend a lot of time actually on the ground working with leaders.
Yeah.
What are some skills that you think are critical to helping these leaders be the best impact drivers, really focused on delivering positive impact in their communities?
So I think that for me, it's really about the blurring of skills, right? So traditionally, community leaders, they are very, very good at the strategy level, right? So looking at systems, understanding their place in them, and really pinpointing at a high level about what needs to change. The thing where I see a lot of struggle, especially in the social space, is then what, right? So for me, given my my history with the D.school and with design, and I don't consider myself a designer, but I've seen the power of what it means to actually add that skill set to a traditional social sector leader's toolkit. And so one of the things that we're doing is that we're in the Central Valley. We're working with cross-sector leaders there, so already, really working with business, government, nonprofit, at the county level, at the city level, police officers, and having them really derive what needs to change in that community at the 2,000-foot view. So we use network mapping, systems analysis, and that kind of stuff. And I feel like that skill set is very aligned with how our social structures are positioned right now. What really turns the table for them is to start to push that change down to the ground level on two accounts. One is kind of the traditional design way of doing things, right? To define a user and to build the skill set from that. But what I'm finding is the residual is also it creates an avenue for them to collaborate together and to collaborate not only across complex systems but across diverse teams. And this is something that I just feel like is gold when you're dealing with the world of complexity that we're now in.
We've been talking a lot about the power of being able to convene diverse stakeholders and voices and be able to come up with a common purpose and then leverage their different strengths. so much to think about. So thank you so much for coming on today to talk to us about what leaders really need to be thinking about in order to become an impact driver, in order to use technology like that wonderful DataKind example, and think about how to apply it to scale positive change in your community and even around the world. Adene, thank you so much. We're going to be following your work closely. We really appreciate you coming today.
Thank you.